It's pretty amazing the differences between Europe and North America because, the things that I've taken for granted just like growing up in Canada, like the way cities are built in Europe, it's like kind of old fort style where it's just like the city and then like forest basically or rural like right after. But we have so many like sprawling suburban spaces and yeah, it's just the way land is monetized from colonization, just it's really deep and I don't think, yeah, if you're not in these kind of worlds, it must be really hard to access conversations even about depth of of how land ownership impacts knowledge and just like community planning. Like
Mm. Yeah, because it's just, if that's the way that things are, then you just think that that's normal.
this gap is very important to fill. The research coming out of Europe, which is great, but like doesn't fit the context.
Mhm.
But maybe for someone who is familiar with decolonization and empathetic, do you have an opinion about what next steps are?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like continual self-reflection, that's like something that I talk about a lot, is like, yeah, continuously self-locating and being like, what am I, who am I, and what am I doing, and who am I doing it for, and all of that. I think like that is something that a lot of researchers already do. And knowing that you just will do that for your entire life and you'll, you'll mess up and people will correct you, and then you just like take that information and you keep going and you get better.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
That's so key. Like you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna feel dumb and guilty and or whatever, and then you just move on.
Yeah, and just do better because a lot of the things are changing right now, and you're kind of pushing against or pushing a little bit past maybe what like how things have been done previously, and so you're gonna come into situations where like maybe you look a little stupid or you do something wrong, and then you're like, okay, this is a learning moment, and then I think
Hmm.
there.
Hmm. So what's next in your research? This isn't a part of your PhD. What's your PhD?
Yeah. So, I mean, my PhD is still very early stages right now, but it's part of two sort of research initiatives that are happening. So, I'm on one project that's looking at rural and indigenous nature-based solutions. And then I'm on another project, which is the Living with Water project, and on the governance mapping project within that. So, I am working with two case communities. One is Squamish Nation, and the other is the city of Prince Rupert.
Hmm.
And this time I am kind of focusing my interest. It's still within the nature-based solution space, but more focused on water. Through the summer, I'm planning a series of workshops that we're going to put on with Squamish Nation to do some mapping of the historical to current timeline of decisions around water. And then in Prince Rupert, I'm going up there this summer and we are going to talk about kind of the water management situation that they're in right now, because a lot of rural communities have a really, really massive infrastructure deficit. I think Prince Rupert's is like $30 million or something like that, and they're having to replace like 100-year-old infrastructure coming up now, and then also dealing with the effects of climate change and concerns about flooding, and they're building a constructed wetland. So there's just a lot going on in terms of nature-based solutions right now. The research is basically just meant to support both communities in creating safe communities that are in line with what works for them.
I always get Prince Rupert confused with Prince George, so I had to
Okay.
Google it just to make sure there's very different climates. Like Prince George is like wildfires and Prince Rupert is flooding.
Hmm. Yeah, Prince Rupert is the rainiest place in North America, I learned.
And
Called
they're
the City of Rainbows.
sorry?
City of Rainbows.
Oh,
That's
aw. Well, I hope you get to see a lot of double rainbows.
yeah, that'd be cool.
Or do you feel comfortable talking about the situations in Squamish Nation and Prince Rupert, or like what you could anticipate working on?
Yeah. Oh, where do I start? Well, they both have some water issues. Basically, Squamish Nation territory experiences all the different types of flooding that you could possibly get, and they're expecting to experience them. So that's sea level rise, freshwater flooding, but then also landslides are an issue across the territory. And then also there's wildfire pressure and drought. So there's just like a lot happening there in general. And Squamish Nation is doing a lot of planning. They just had their generational plan approved. And then they also are in the process of finalizing their climate action plan. So there is a lot of movement that is happening in that space, which is pretty cool. And it's good timing too, because then we kind of have places to jump off from. They also just released a history book that I think is like the first Squamish Nation approved history of the nation, which is pretty awesome as well. So yeah, I'm excited to read it, and we're pretty lucky that all of this is coming out right now so that we can have a bit better of an understanding of their territory and their culture and their context. And then in terms of Prince Rupert, they are, as I mentioned, they're just dealing with this massive infrastructure deficit. They, right now, kind of our entry point was they're working on creating this constructed wetland. It's like a pilot facility with this engineering consulting firm that's out of Alberta.
Wow.
And they needed to use it because previously they were dumping all of their sewage into the ocean, but that's not allowed anymore. And so they're trying to scramble and figure out what they're gonna do.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's gross.
Corn-fed crabs. So just a gross way of saying that they dump sewage into the ocean.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is that they told me that that there's something called a Prince Rupert basement, which is just when because there's so much water that goes underneath houses that people will just like dig out their basement so the water can just flow through.
There were basements, and then they decided to keep it a flowing area.
I guess so. I haven't seen one, so I don't know exactly how it works, but when we were talking to the planner, she mentioned that. So I thought that was pretty interesting local adaptation to flooding.
It's terrifying and awesome that there's people like you working on it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Anwen Rees is a PhD candidate at Simon Fraser University in the Resource and Environmental Management program. To learn more about her research and about the work of other members from the Living with Water research group, visit www.livingwithwater.ca. And if you liked this episode, please give it a like or rate it 5 stars or subscribe to our channel because it helps other people who are interested in climate change adaptation find it. Thank you to our sponsors at PICS, the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, to the project coordinators Case Lockman and Vanessa Lewick. And if you made it this far, thank you to you for streaming the Living with Water podcast.